Hey everybody, it's Greg Majewski with another episode of Room for Seconds. Today I have an incredible guest with me, Maria Rivera from Smalls. She is an icon in this industry, or an up-and-coming icon in this industry, with one of the coolest brands out there. Started with some famous people in the second sort of generation from an idea that's already kicked butt. And she's been tasked with an amazing task of growing this company, and she has done huge in the first couple years since she's been behind it. Maria, great for taking the time to join us today, and I look forward to getting to know you a little bit more since we've somewhat become friends over the last couple years.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's always good to speak to people that you admire and that you have a lot of camaraderie with. We got to know each other a little bit in the circuit, and it's just good to always have a familiar face to spend time when we get to do what we do.
Yeah, the circuit, for everyone who is not familiar with it, is there is a absolute ton of restaurant shows and stuff like that. And Maria and I are at all of them because we're trying to get our brands to be built and further down the line. And so we've gotten to know each other through that. And the circuit is, once you start it, it is a torrid pace of travel, spring and fall, that takes up the majority of your time.
It does.
So,
It does. You have to be very organized for sure.
yeah, it's amazing how many conferences and how many continue to pop up. I mean, there's a new one all the time.
Yeah, I try. I don't go to all of them. I feel like I do, but I don't. Not anymore. We obviously have been building our team, so we try to divide and conquer. But I try to be in the ones that I'm going to take something out of it. So there's a couple that I really, really like.
So, which one do you actually really, really like?
I like multi-unit franchise conference a lot. I enjoy that forum, especially because I get to meet so many franchisees. I also love Prosper. It's probably my favorite conference of the year. I know it's newer, but it's just something that really speaks to my heart and the things that I believe in. So I'm looking forward to spending some time with the team in Florida a little bit later this year. And of course, you always take a lot out of these type of events. And restaurant leadership, it's my next favorite. So
Okay. So I'm restaurant finance, is my all-time favorite. And that's just because of the amount of deals and the people there.
yes.
So that's the one that has always been my biggest one. And then Prosper obviously has a place in my heart because, I sort of throw a little bit of a party with a bunch of
You
people.
you do. And I guess I'll see you then.
So that one's fun. And we're doing it a little bit bigger this year.
You
So
are.
of course, I can't just have fireworks. We got to have a surprise.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. I look forward to seeing you then.
So Maria, how did you get into this industry and what made you decide this was sort of where you wanted to be?
Hmm. I started as a dishwasher at the Walt Disney Company way too many years ago to count. It was not an easy decision. I was a single parent. So, when I left Puerto Rico, we all either land in New York or in Florida. It's going to be one of the two. And I landed in Orlando with a brand new baby. And I was a single parent, as I told you, and I needed a job. So I walked into the casting center and they said to me, we have positions open for steward. I didn't know what a steward was. I thought it was sort of like, a host or hostess. And then there I am in a kitchen doing dishes. But I've always been fortunate enough to work for amazing people. My chef at the time was an incredible and powerful woman that saw the potential. And very quickly, I moved into the training and development function for Magic Kingdom Parks, where I spent 2 years building hourly field training. And from there, became a manager and sort of never looked back. But most of my career in QSR at the Walt Disney Company, and then subsequently, I've done all styles of service, but I have deep appreciation for retail QSR and the evolution of QSR and fast casual. So that's how I started. washing dishes. But I was always very well put together washing dishes. So, my dish room was very, very clean. And if you came in and you didn't decoy system, it would have not been a good conversation.
I can imagine. I, I also could imagine the struggle because you uh, in there because your personality is so vibrant and so all that. The dish room had to be one happening place.
Happening. Red lipstick, hair put back like this in a bun, completely organized, highly methodical. Obviously, most kitchens, typically a lot of Hispanics, we end up in the kitchen. So I was bound determined to get out of the kitchen. So therefore, I needed to do an excellent job. But it was a little bit of a shock, especially because I had finished my bachelor's and I'm like, what am I doing in a dish room? But of course, then I fell in love with the business and I've never looked back. So it's the grease gets in your vein. I do think that you develop a high level of organization and people skills if you work in a kitchen. So therefore, that's the beginning of my journey. And then of course, I've done every cute role out there, manager, senior manager, director, vice president, all of them up until now being chief executive officer, which is the privilege of a lifetime.
So Disney is my mecca. So if you get to know me a little bit, you know that I look and use Disney as an example almost all the time. And if they can keep a smile on the face every day with having to deal with what they deal with, then our staff should be able to handle, a couple hundred customers in a day.
Yeah.
It's nowhere near. What was the biggest takeaway from your time there? What was the one thing that you sort of imply from Disney everywhere else that you've been?
Definitely my focus on customer service. I do think that understanding who's behind a transaction has always been forefront, top of mind. A, I'm a brand architect, and that would not have happened without having the education and the preparation I had through, 7, 8 years there. There is a way in which they run their food and beverage that is really unique. It's very data driven, incredibly focused on who's behind the transaction, very personalized. Believe it or not, they track you throughout your entire journey. And I don't think I would be able to have the breadth and how deep we can go in asking pertinent questions about all sorts of things that have to do with cultivating brand if it wasn't for my years there. Also, the leadership is incredible. I do think they cultivate their talent incredibly well. I have worked with what I consider some of the greatest operators in the space. And you learn so much about people movement as a KPI. So it certainly has shaped my thinking, and I carry that everywhere I go.
People always laugh and they're like, Disney's just an amusement park. But what they don't realize is that there's more fine dining restaurants in that little mecca of Walt Disney World than almost anywhere. And to keep that level of service and all that with the type of customers that are walking in, which are not really coming for fine dining, but they want that fine dining experience.
Right.
To me, it's a whole different skill set. And it's always so cool to watch and, partake or again, repair wise, something breaks and it's fixed the next day. Now, obviously it's not as good as it used to be. But it's definitely an amazing thing that every employee is always focused on making sure everything is always perfect for that one guest. And we don't do that enough in this industry.
Well, I mean, the key here has always been that you are trained from the moment you walk in the door. You can come in walking from any walk of life, and you are sort of transformed culturally into the service model and the customer service model. So following without bias any guest through their experiential journey is very much what you're taught to do. And I think it's remarkable that you can be 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, and everybody moves the same way, talks the same way, stands the same way. And I call it a Disney institutionalized model, but it does help you always be very authentic in your interactions because you truly care about what's happening to the person that you're speaking to. It's not easy to work there. It's very methodical, and, you have to have great business acumen, and you're as good as your last P&L, but ultimately they give you the tools. And I do think that that's also something that I happen to do with my teams, is provide them the tools to be successful. And then from there, we have high expectations, of course. But yeah, I think that's the best part. I still have so many friends that work there. They have carried with me through so many years. Just people think different in that environment.
Yeah, without a doubt. So then after you left Disney, you went to another sort of iconic brand. So what did you learn at that one?
Well, I did a short stint through the hotel world. I wanted to be the managing director.
Hospitality.
Yeah, of a Caribbean property overlooking the ocean. It was my first time going back to Puerto Rico and leading food and beverage for a major hotel chain. Definitely coming from Disney and going there was a whole different experience, right? Because labor laws, unions, all those things in the hospitality world, that was a huge learning environment. I learned very quickly that revenue management is a skill that anybody should have in the hotel space. And then from there, I actually went to Darden, and I spent a significant amount of years at Olive Garden. Look, Olive Garden to me is an icon when it comes to opening restaurants and training at a fast pace. I was there the years where you were doing 40, 50, 60 Olive Gardens a year. When Dave Pickens was president of the brand. And I had never, ever done multi-unit. So I was coming from being VP in the hotel space, coming and leading a region in several states. And that was a big learning for me, that you could manage a casual dining environment through lots of standards and discipline. From Darden, and specifically from Olive Garden, their focus on making sure that every experience is consistent. It was incredible. I actually did openings as a senior director for a year and a half of my life. And I can promise you I can walk to an Olive Garden still today and tell you everything that is wrong with every setup, because how to lead a P75 left or right a certain way and know where everything goes. And from there, probably our disciplinary approach to opening and making sure that folks have the ability to execute openings in a very disciplined way. It's my biggest takeaway. So, from every brand that you go to, if you have the right mindset, you're always going to learn something. And I try to focus on what I can learn that is good, and not focus on the things that are not so good. And that has always been tools in the toolkit that I leverage along the way. So those were my Darden days before I went and took a turn to do all sorts of fun things, divestitures, bankruptcies. I did bankruptcies for a minute. Not fun, but it teaches you a lot. So the divestiture space then became rather intrigued by transactional activity. And the past, I would say 8 years have been more focused on transactional type of experiences, either building businesses within the business or, IPOs or leading VCs and doing all sort of fun things.
So you mentioned the bad word of bankruptcies. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah.
Restaurant industry, obviously, right now is taking some bashing because a bunch of us are struggling and a bunch of us are having a very, very difficult time. Bankruptcy is used usually in negative. and most
Mhm.
people perceive it as a horrible thing. Um, I don't. I think bankruptcy is a way to cleanse for past mistakes and sort of a way to grow out of things that you just, hey,
Mhm.
no one thought a restaurant was going to be open for 20 years. No one thought what that rent escalation was going to be 20 years from now that you ever were going to really have to pay double what you were paying when you started the lease.
Mhm.
Our minds just didn't work that way. Um, so I don't think bankruptcy to get out of restructuring and stuff like that is always a negative. Unfortunately, right now, bankruptcy in our industry is a negative. Do you think we're going to continue to see restaurants struggle in the next couple of years as the economy turns around, or do you think some of the legacy brands that are out there are just at the end of their time, and the new ones like yours are going to sort of scoop in and win?
You know, wow, that's a deep question and one that we talk about often amongst a couple of friends. I think this space is going through an evolution. Restructuring is a mechanism and a tool for brands to be able to, your point, have an opportunity to do things in a different way or modify legacy situations that are inherited. And especially with businesses that you acquire businesses, right? So you are going to inherit some good things and some bad things, and then you're going to have to cleanse that. It's very different when you're building from a white sheet of paper. I ended up in the divestiture and restructuring space. It wasn't a planned situation. And to be very frank, when I was, people don't recognize the amount of discipline you have to have when you're the lead operator to take your team intact through that process, pre-pack or long term. Um, I don't think I would be a successful leader if I had not seen all sides of this situation, what can work in the restaurant space or what doesn't work. So, of course, you don't want to do too many of these, but nobody wants to. No, it's not a fun situation. But if you have an opportunity to do it, and you have the intestinal fortitude to put yourself through it and lead with a lot of caring and empathy and transparency, it is an incredible experience to, from a business acumen standpoint, especially in the real estate space with lease restructurings and all sorts of things. I wouldn't have met as many talented people, certainly would have not worked with half of the consultants that have worked in the space if I had not done it. But I do think the industry is going to go through an evolution. I do think that brands that, regardless if they're big or small, it does not matter. To me, this is an agility game. I think that brands that are not really focused on who's behind their transaction and understanding deeply their customer are going to struggle. The customer is changing way faster than brands can and are very finicky. Social influences buying behavior. 90% of decisions are made on a phone. So I think that any CEO today is leading through a very challenging set of situations. And look, if anything, this role teaches you how to have incredible empathy and to lead with hands out, not hands up. And you have to stay really open-minded to not think that you know it all. Frankly, I've been doing this for 30 years. I don't know half of the stuff that I thought I knew walking into this role. I think it's an and, Greg. I think that we're going to see some brands go away. I think we're going to see some brands successfully manage restructuring. And I think we're going to see some newer brands that are more agile be able to navigate a difficult time. The consumer today is in high school. And the consumer that we're going to have 3 years from now is in high school. And that's a very different consumer that went through pandemic, learned how to eat differently. So I think we have our work cut out for us. And I, I do think that leaders today have to be very much connected to their field organization and to their teams and have to be on listening mode. If not, you're going to be left behind. I happen to be leading in an emerging space. Um, Look, we all want to do it the right way, and we want to be 100% successful 5 years from now, but we have to be very open-minded to be able to get to that aspiration. Because if not, you're just going to be the fad, and that's not what we want to do.
No, without a doubt. You brought up another point that I want to get to, but I want to go back to the bankruptcy side because Red Lobster is the one that obviously to me is the most iconic brand that's sort of struggling right now. And when I look at and I deep down into it, it was really greed that sort of caused that downside. It wasn't the restaurant was struggling, it was the fact that they resold the lease backs and everything else that put these stores in such a bad position. So I've always been worried, and I tell people continually, hey, getting a bunch of money from PE is always wonderful. But it also comes with a lot of other problems. And as you grow and as everyone, these emerging brands continue to speak, and why what we do is a little bit different than traditional PE. I'm not a PE firm. Um, we give the guidance and actual leadership when we operate what we're doing. We just don't have you grow to grow. And so many of these brands right now have gotten money and, and they're getting to that point where they've got to cash out and make the investors whole. And that's where the problem comes in. And the older you get, the harder it is to continue to give that kind of return, you know?
Yeah, well, margins are tight, as we all know it, especially with COGS and labor, et cetera. So again, I do think that the evolution of how people have to eat. We talk about that all the time. How people choose to eat is where you have to stay very connected. And look, there is to me an opportunity to define further, and this is across the space. What should the customer journey and the user experience should be, both digitally and from a traditional footprint, because more and more, the consumer wants to have a combination of both, and you have to define it so you're not ending up in situations where you have too much of a big unit and real estate that is complicated. Most of the situations with cash, as are bad real estate decisions, bad, leases. Most of them are just really difficult to walk away from. And then when you are doing sale leasebacks and all sorts of other activities and overburdening your units, then it becomes a complex situation. I do think that is the best advice we can give our franchise partners, is how to best set themselves up so they don't have to be in that situation. I mean, I can tell you, we meet with a lot of franchise candidates and franchisees that some of them have done really well, and some of them have overburdened their current footprint and scenario, and they're going to have to make some decisions on diversifying their portfolios as they continue to want to grow a multi-concept and become mumbos. So it's a challenging time, and it's not linear. Everybody's going through different things. And, look, do I think that the industry is resilient? Absolutely. Do I think that we are going to come out of the short-term headwinds? Yes. Are we going to be different? Yes. And how different? We don't know. I do think that that's the beauty of staying really open-minded and, phoning friends and speaking to other CEOs and getting perspective. I do think that if you are sitting in the chairs that you and I are sitting, and you have the opportunity and the privilege to do this, we have to, like I said, help each other out more than ever, because it's not linear.
Nope. So let's funner conversation. You talk about the customer evolution and the customer journey, and you brought up social and phone. And I think so many people get the two confused or group them as the same, where they are not. Can you walk through what the difference is between the two and, how you target both of them?
Yeah. Well, for us, we've worked really hard to define it. So we separate the two. We very clearly are focused on, here's what digital marketing and social and social mining needs to do for us as we continue to learn who's behind the transaction. And here's what tech enablement means for us, right? So there is this whole set of digital and technology experiences that you need to have in the four walls of your location so you can communicate and you can leverage the opportunity for consumers to buy from your brand in a very specific way. And then there's the ability to continue to build your brand and your brand voice so through social channels. It is not the same. And you have to put a tremendous amount of effort to define both your digital experience journey and your technology that enables that digital experience for it to then translate your brand voice through digital channels. I think food and beverage today is evolving into a very retail type of scenario where you have to really be very connected to how people are utilizing you. 3PD to 1PD conversion. How do you continue? But that requires brand voice building through your digital channels, and you have to be, aesthetics means something. And when people open your app, they have to really feel something, and that is hard. That requires personalization, money, engineering. You can't get ahead of yourself, so you have to continuously educate your consumer through your social. Who are you? How do they use you? So it's a super brainiac scenario. I mean, we spend a lot of time on this topic, and frankly, a lot of design time on this topic. It's not easy. It's fun, especially when you have something that people want to wear and gravitate. We are building sort of this experiential brand for all, not for some. And we've had to develop our own language, our own way to presenting people. And it's an evolution. Look, when we were 18 months ago, we've evolved a lot, and we still have so much work to do, because every month as we socially mine, we uncover one little nugget that goes, oh, okay, this could lead to X, Y, and Z. Like, for example, we don't play the big influencer game. That's another brand's game. We are not going to copy that. But there's something unique forming around this little influencer, this small town hero that everybody wants to follow, that feels really authentic to us. And so we're exploring that. We don't know where that's going to lead, but we're exploring that. And again, it's one video goes viral, you know what happens. So,
Right.
a lot of people think we have an army of people working here. We have two people that really do all this social stuff, and they're 25-year-olds, and that are so smart. So, I mean, I don't even know what they do with the TikTok stuff, but for some reason we are growing 200% every month, and well, I'll take it.
Yeah. And then you still don't know, and you can't measure what comes from it. Like, there's
No,
no way to measure if social drives traffic.
no, we don't know that, but we certainly think that it can evolve our share of voice and
I
for
agree.
people to get to know us. So, we utilize social to just amplify our voice. That does not mean that we're not focusing on traditional digital tactics to drive traffic. And it's not always going to be accretive 100%, but we have to be in with absolutely utilizing 3PD and absolutely doing the basics on online ordering, et cetera. I mean, we have to.
So we've seen digital space become very, very competitive.
Mm.
So 18 months ago, you could have a budget and sort of own your geo-fenced area around the stores, and it was very
Not so
simple.
much anymore.
We were dominant, put a little
Yeah.
money in, and nobody else wanted
Yeah.
to play in that sandbox. Now, the big boys, as I call them, um, are all about the digital space, and you can't get that same result anymore. And
No.
so what's so cool about the emerging spaces is that we've always figured out how to get ahead of them and run. And now we're all looking for that next head step because they're now playing in our sandbox, you know?
It's a whole different situation. You used to be able to manage your algorithm, invest some money, and be at the top of that opening page. Not so much anymore. You have to fight. We we've had to rethink our photography, our communication, the way that we food style, the way we package, just so the clicks lead us to now play the big game because we don't have the dollars, right, to throw against it. I mean, you have to be very scrappy, especially when you don't have, a huge brand fund. So we make do, but trust me, we've had to be very agile along the way, super agile. And we spend more time on how do we want to present the banners than anything else. But in a way, I'll tell you, Greg, I mean, when I think about prior to the last 2 years, being in a global, huge brand with huge budgets, I am far more connected to the work right now, strictly because, we all are working, rolling our sleeves and building something. So I've learned way too much about this space, and I had no idea. I didn't know anything. Now, of course, I have met all the great minds that have taught me one or two things, particularly Meredith and Carl, who I consider so, so, so smart. And so I've had to educate myself a lot in the space.
Yeah, I learn something every day in that space, and it's changing so fast. And I wish there was a magic pill I could tell people to go and run to try, but there's not.
No,
And one of my
no.
biggest talking points lately has been we're all focused so much on our loyalty customers that we spend all this money attracting those loyalty customers. And hey, they're worth so much and this and that. We all forgot about the other 80%.
Mm.
And we've neglected nurturing the other 80% that don't use loyalty and don't come in as often and don't convert. Because I'm never a loyalty customer. I'm a customer that in restaurants that never use loyalty. And I don't get messaging. I don't know about new things. I don't get any of that because we've forgotten about them. And they're still 80% of our sales. So how do you build that component while focusing on the loyalty side is that new dilemma, especially for the emerging groups, you know?
Yeah, well, operational excellence has never gone out of style, and hospitality has never gone out of style. The opportunity here is that you absolutely have to win in the service channel. We are drive-through only, right? And we have a window, and you can come and order from the window if you want to. But 85% of our customers are drive-through customer, and right, wrong, or indifferent. The big machine taught America how to get in a drive-through, so we have to make sure that our drive-through is efficient, but we make food to order, so it's not going to be the same. And we have to focus a lot on our four-wall experience because, I mean, it's 750 square feet. Like, you can only fit so many people. It's not like you have a ton of space. So we can't forget that. Bad experiences, people are going to go. If you are a millennial parent with your 10-year-old and your 10-year-old didn't like the experience, you're not coming back as a parent. You're going to go where your kids can actually have a meal and feel good about it. And it's faster than it was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, you order online or you order in a restaurant during the pandemic when the restaurants open and you were okay waiting 45 minutes. You are not anymore. You're like, where's my food? I want it hot. I want it fast. So, like, I do think that the definition of how we continue to drive service and hospitality also has evolved. And we don't know what that will continue to be. But, look, I have my opinions about, drone deliveries and cart deliveries and all those things. It's too cumbersome for me. I mean,
I'm also a
maybe
little
I'm
scared of everything falling in my head.
yeah, I mean, I'm like, maybe I'm super old and I will see what happens in the next iteration of who leads smalls, but I just can't wrap my head around that. It's too complex for, I think today the consumer is exhausted from making decisions and has this everything on their phone. So the more we can simplify the decision, at least in our space, the better it's going to be. at least for today. It might evolve a year and a half from now, but I spend most of my time asking the question, does this feel complex? And if the answer is yes, then the next question is going to be, so why are we doing it again? Do we have to go down this path? Is this absolutely necessary? Do we actually have a transaction problem? And it's very hard to live on the simplification space. Simple is hard, and I didn't say that. Somebody smarter than me did. But simple is hard because we tend to want to overcomplicate things to just get volume and to get AUVs to be a certain way and to get, but I just don't know how long that can last. As having 90 SKUs or 80 SKUs, that's a thing of the past. And look, do we need to expand our menu? I mean, sometimes I ask myself, maybe we do. Today, no. Let's just try to do a phenomenal product and just stay in touch with 12 SKUs and try to simplify. Life in itself is too complex as it is these days.
Very, very cool. So Maria, last question. And it's one I ask everybody. If you have one bit of advice that you can give somebody just starting out in this industry, why choose the restaurant space and why hospitality? And why do you stick with it?
I mean, first of all, I am so glad that I happened to walk into the casting center when I was a youngster and not turn my nose off to being a steward and stay in the business. I stay in the business because of the humanity of the business. I do think this industry is amazing. I have made incredible friends along the way. I have been able to study. I have been able to provide for my son, for my mother, for my siblings. The restaurant space has been great to me, and I wouldn't do anything else. It's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. You have to be disciplined. It requires that you really love what you do. You can't be half in, half out. It's a 24/7 journey. It's like being a doctor. The best advice I can give people is, look, if you want to make it in this space, then being authentic to who you are goes a long way. This is a highly intelligent business that has a lot of intelligent people. Staying open-minded matters. And, if you can do that, you're going to be very successful. If you are arrogant, you are not. And that's just how I view the world.
Very, very true. Well, Maria, thank you for taking the time. I know you are extremely busy. Everyone needs to check out Smalls. If you're looking for a franchise, I don't say this very often since obviously I sell my own, but it is one of the few brands that I would actually consider owning outside of my other investments. So check out their site and check out all their information. It is absolutely fabulous. Again, everyone, thank you for joining us. This is another great episode of Room for Seconds, and we'll be back in next week with a brand new episode. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. It's always so fun.
Hey viewers, thanks again for supporting Room for Seconds. If you found this episode inspiring, interesting, or any bit informative, please hit that little subscribe button down at the bottom so you never miss an episode. In my 26 years in this amazing industry, I've been blessed with incredible mentorship. This show is my way of giving back. Follow me on LinkedIn, search Greg Majewski, on Twitter, @Greg_Majewski. If you still have room for more, visit our website at media.craveworthybrands.com. You'll find more videos, shows, notes, blogs, resources, and an easy way to get in touch with the Craveworthy Brands team. I'm your host, Greg Majewski. Thanks again for tuning in to Room for Seconds.